all of them Dalit staff members, or there may be a few OBC members, but there have been a number of resignations, there have been mass demonstrations in Chennai, Delhi, Trivandrum, and other cities. The latest in Mumbai attracted a crowd of approximately 10,000. So what we're seeing is an outpouring of grief and solidarity around his death, which has forced into the open the violence of Indian caste society. And more specifically, I think his death bears witness to the workings of caste in Indian higher education, particularly in India's so-called premier institutions of higher education. It also illuminates the backlash against anti-caste activism from the highest levels of government. So for those of you who haven't been following the current upheaval, I wanted to start with some details that have emerged about Rohit's life and death. Rohit Vemula grew up in a town called Guntur in Andhra Pradesh. A recent journalistic essay by Sudipto Mandal offers a very sensitive and illuminating portrait of his family life and the complicated caste dynamics of his household. As a baby, Rohit's mother, Radhika, who is the child of Mala migrant laborers, was informally adopted by Anjani Devi, a woman from the higher Vadera caste. Radhika's adoption appears to have been a convenient way for Anjani to have live-in servants. Radhika and her children were expected to do unpaid labor in the household in exchange for the privilege of inhabiting a higher caste home. In different ways, their caste status was both obscured and acknowledged. As a member of Anjani's household, Radhika passed as Vadera and was married to a Vadera man who initially wasn't told about her Dalit parentage. On the other hand, the secret was exposed in the everyday routines of labor and subordination inside her adoptive home. It also leaked out at critical moments with explosive results, such as when Radhika's husband found out that she was Dalit and began to beat her so severely that she had to seek refuge with her children back in Anjani's home. These unnamed but everyday experiences of caste subordination also passed down to Radhika's children, who, like their mother, were expected to serve their Vadera kin. The differential treatment of Anjani's biological and adopted kin was most apparent when it came to education. Her biological children were given only the best. One son is an engineer and the other a civil contractor. Both daughters are college graduates and one is married to a successful criminal lawyer in Guntur. All of this was accomplished with the full financial and moral backing of the family. By contrast, Radhika was married off at the age of 14, which is under the legal age of marriage. And despite being their adoptive grandmother, Anjani did not pay for Rohit's or his brother Raja's education. To pay his way through college, Rohit did all manner of menial jobs, including construction labor and catering. Raja followed suit, even working for a time as a domestic servant for his senior classmate. In a poignant statement, Raja referred to their home life as, quote, the truth that my brother and I would want to hide the most. We felt ashamed to reveal that the woman we called grandma is actually our master. The most intimate portrait of Rohit's life comes from his best friend, Riaz. He says Rohit was obsessed with finding part-time jobs and spending time on the internet. Rohit was a huge fan of Julian Assange and spent hours with the WikiLeaks files. When he finished his BSc degree, Rohit was spoiled for postgraduate choices. He decided to join the University of Hyderabad, where he was offered a junior research scholarship. He intended his research to be a combination of technical and social sciences. According to Riaz, a lot of Rohit's knowledge of the social sciences came from his association with groups like the Ambedkar Students Association and the Students' Federation of India, which place a lot of emphasis on their members reading political theory. So this then is a story of remarkable perseverance and achievement against the odds. Riaz put it this way, quote, his family story haunted Rohit all his life. He faced caste discrimination in the house where he grew up. But instead of succumbing, Rohit fought it out. He broke many barriers before he got to the final stretch, his PhD. He gave up when he realized he could go no further, unquote. So what was it that made Rohit give up? Of course, it's difficult to discern what leads an individual to take his own life. And we have to be careful not to assume that we know and fully understand the causes. Rohit's own words attest to his long struggle to transcend what he called the fatal accident of his birth. In the heartbreaking letter he left behind, he despaired of a world where, quote, the value of a man was reduced to his immediate identity and nearest possibility, to a vote, to a number, to a thing. Never was a man treated as a mind, unquote. Rohit wanted human beings to be cherished, quote, as glorious things made up of stardust, in every field, in studies, in streets, in life, and in death. He loved science, stars, nature, and wanted to be a writer of science, like Carl Sagan. What was it about the university that led not to the realization of these dreams, but to Rohit's untimely death? Some clues lie in the sequence of events immediately preceding his death. In August 2015, BJP Labour Minister Bandaru Dattatreya wrote to Smriti Irani, the Minister of Human Resource Development, charging the Ambedkar Students Association of, quote, casteist, extremist, and anti-national politics, unquote. He also charged the ASA with assaulting Sushil Kumar, president of the BJP-affiliated ABVP, which is another student organization. From September to November, the ministry wrote 4 times to the University of Hyderabad's Vice-Chancellor, Appar Rao, echoing Dattatreya's charges and insisting that this matter be given, quote, VIP attention, unquote. Yielding to the pressure, Appar Rao took action against 5 Dalit student members of the ASA, even though the university proctorial board had found no proof of an assault on Kumar. In what amounted to a social and political boycott that reeks of caste ostracism, the 5 Dalit students, including Rohit, were denied entry into the dorms, cafeterias, and other social spaces on campus, and disqualified from participating in student union elections. In protest, they spent 12 days sleeping outdoors. And on the 12th day, Rohit committed suicide. There was another critical issue as well. From July 2015, the university had stopped paying Rohit his monthly stipend of rupees 25,000. His suicide note mentioned that he was owed 1.75 lakh rupees by the university. Rohit's friends alleged that he was targeted for his work with the ASA. A university official denied the allegation, blaming the delay on paperwork. There has been no acknowledgement whatsoever of the devastating effect of such delays, if that's what they were, on students like Rohit who had no family resources to fall back on. Whatever the truth, in December 2015, a month before his death, Rohit wrote an agonized, sarcastic letter to the Vice-Chancellor, praising his opposition to the Dalit self-respect movement on campus and backing for the ABVP. He also requested Appar Rao to provide euthanasia facilities for students. In that letter and the one that followed, we hear Rohit's anger, but also his grief in the face of the systematic and systemic reduction of Dalits to numbers, to votes, to things, and the imprisonment of Dalit dreams and aspirations in the ugly accusatory language of anti-nationalism and casteism. The sequence of events at the University of Hyderabad may seem extreme, enough to be an aberration, but the situation surrounding Rohit's death is eerily reminiscent of an earlier sequence of events that took place in April 2015, when another student group, the Ambedkar Periyar Study Circle, was targeted at IIT Madras. At that time, an anonymous group of IIT Madras students sent a letter to Smriti Irani complaining that the APSC created, quote, hatred among students in the name of caste and against the Prime Minister and Hindus, unquote. As with Hyderabad, and despite official policy against responding to anonymous letters, Irani reacted swiftly to express her concern over the allegations to the IIT Madras director. In response, the IIT Madras Dean of Students de-recognized the APSC. These 2 episodes, first at IIT Madras and then at the University of Hyderabad, highlight a disturbing problem. The willingness of the Modi government to interfere in the internal workings of universities and throw its weight behind Hindu nationalist student groups like the ABVP. It also reveals how premier institutions reinforce the upper caste culture of their campuses. It is no accident that the APSC and the ASA were targeted. Both groups invoke the Dalit leader Ambedkar as inspiration and have been vocal critics of caste discrimination and Hindu nationalism both on and off campus. There were two ASA events in particular that brought the group into a head-on collision with the ABVP and eventually with the Modi government. The first was an event organized after the hanging of Yaqub Memon, where students objected to the inhumanity of the death penalty. The second was the screening of the film Muzaffarnagar Baki Hai on the 2013 communal riots in Muzaffarnagar and Shamli that paved the way for Modi's victory in the 2014 general elections. It was these events that provoked the ABVP and Dattatraya to charge the ASA with anti-national behavior. And it was what led university administrators at Hyderabad to bow to political pressure in targeting their most vulnerable students. Rohit Vemula was not alone in experiencing his university as a hostile environment. Between 2007 and 2013, two other Dalit students committed suicide at the University of Hyderabad. Typically, university officials respond to student suicides by pathologizing the dead. Dalit students in particular are assumed to take their lives because of their inability to cope with academic pressure. Regardless of whether they gained admission through reservations, their lack of merit becomes the self-evident explanation. This assumption precludes any deeper reflection by administrators and faculty into the profoundly alienating culture of their institutions. They don't recognize what Dalit students in particular experience on a daily basis, the stigma associated with the quota and the expectation of failure. In their recourse to the alibi of merit, officials treat students like Rohit, who have persevered against the odds, as undeserving and intellectually inferior, when in truth they contribute vital perspectives that enhance the search for knowledge and for a more equitable society. By failing to encourage and support these students, they reinforce the perception that upper castes are the only meritorious and truly deserving members of their institutions. This is all the more egregious considering that the University of Hyderabad is a public university. As many of you are no doubt aware, inequalities have grown sharply in India, with the wealthiest 1% owning more than half the nation's wealth, while the poorest 50 own less than 5%. There's a strong caste dimension to this inequality. Not one of the $55 billionaires that India boasts of are from the lower castes, whereas these same castes form a disproportionately high share of the poor. In this context of growing inequality and the state's failure to redistribute land or even to tax wealth adequately, higher education holds out a significant resource for social mobility and has emerged as a key battleground of low caste rights. The good news is that formal access to higher education has expanded exponentially. Between 1991 and 2014, total enrollment in higher education increased 6.5 times. The number of universities nearly quadrupled, and the gross enrollment ratio for the 18 to 23 age group almost tripled. The bad news is that the bulk of the expansion has been in private colleges, which now account for 65% of enrollment and 75% of higher educational institutions. Private colleges are notorious for extortionist fees that can sink even middle-class families in debt. In this context, the public university serves a key democratizing function and becomes a critical site of aspiration. The combined effect of reservations and economic and demographic changes has radically diversified a student body that used to be drawn predominantly from the upper and dominant castes. Political interventions like the 93rd Constitutional Amendment, enabling the government to expand reservations in centrally funded educational institutions, have ensured that even elite public universities, which used to operate under a form of tacit caste apartheid, are now integrated. This has generated intense conflicts. Tensions are highest in the most elite institutions, where upper castes bitterly resent the breaching of their erstwhile monopoly. It is here that the defense of merit as a form of upper caste property and opposition to caste quotas is most shrill. And it's here that people like Rohit experience profound hostility and alienation after a lifetime of struggle. So what should we learn from Rohit's final message? As with his icon, B.R. Ambedkar, Rohit was an activist for Dalit rights, who nonetheless believed that human beings were not defined by their social categories. To be a Dalit did not preclude being a scientist, or an artist, or a constitutional lawyer. Being a Dalit did not mean one couldn't be the next Carl Sagan. In contrast to the blinkered view of merit as upper caste property, Rohit's was a truly universal, even transcendent understanding of merit as the potential in every individual waiting to be realized. To me, his final letter is a clarion call to uphold the true mission of the university, to foster the unique talents of each student while fully acknowledging the hurdles that some have crossed to even be on campus. It's to understand that in a real democracy, higher education must recognize histories of privilege and discrimination, and insist that every student, especially the most socially disadvantaged, has the ability to reach the stars. Finally, it's a call to protect the university as a space of critical reflection and outspoken dissent, so that students like Rohit can imagine and enact a truly alternative future. So I want to turn it over now to the rest of the panel. Why don't we start